Hi everyone, this is Billy and you're listening to Humans of Authenticity, the CEO Special Edition. Our guest today is Adam Levy, Executive Director at the American Cleft Palate-Craniofacial Association. We work together on the ASA Small Staff Association Advisory Council, and I really look forward to the conversation today. Welcome to Human of Authenticity, Adam.
Thank you so much, Vi. It's great to be here with you.
Would you like to introduce yourself to our listener first?
Sure. My name is Adam Levy. I'm the Executive Director of the American Cleft Palate-Craniofacial Association. I've worked in associations for about 20 years. Started in events, conferences, conventions before transitioning over. I'm a dad, I'm a husband, own a pit bull, I'm a runner. I like to eat a lot of food, ice cream specifically. I could go on, but I'll leave it there.
There was one thing that I shared with you at the beginning of the conversations. When I look at your LinkedIn profile, the first thing I saw in your intro is a dad and a husband. Can you share a little bit about that experience and whether or how that experience influenced you as an association professor?
Yeah, I chose to do that deliberately. I'm actually sort of a stickler when it comes to not oversharing personal things on LinkedIn. In this case, I felt like professionally, I'm a person who really supports, especially my staff, with their personal life in terms of balance. So the fact that I am a dad and a husband first is really important for me to showcase when it comes to those values that I believe every leader should have in their organization. So that's really why I chose to have those two things first. I think when I became a dad, especially, I really had to evaluate the balance of personal and work life. And that's really sort of a reminder for me at all times as to why I work in the first place.
Can you talk to me a bit more about how you protect the balance of your work life? Especially, I noticed that when we work from home, that boundaries can be easily blurred. So how do you protect your boundaries so that you can have quality time for both of your pockets?
Great question. It's taken a good amount of time to find that balance. First of all, I don't always get it right, even if I intend to. So setting aside time or saying that I'll take some time off here or something like that. Sometimes things just come up, and as much control that I have in my role, sometimes I do have to put work first, especially in critical moments. So that could mean an evening meeting. I work in healthcare. A lot of the people that I work with are in clinic all day, in hospitals all day, and the only time they can meet is in the evening. Sometimes my personal life balance gets thrown off by that. But for the most part, I really do try to be intentional about my personal time. I make sure that I'm very open with things with my kids and with my wife. I set time aside, and I try to make sure that I don't miss the big things, knowing that some of these things only happen once. It's really worth it to make sure that I focus on that and don't miss those things.
When you say sometimes you put work first in critical moments, how do you make up with your kids and family after putting your work first? Was there stories or a particular celebrations that you can share with us?
Yeah, two things are there. One, I've established with my board, in which obviously there are changes to my board and my president every year. So I would say I reestablish kind of a cultural element every year that my personal life is important to me. And that's something that I think I established early on. So it's not a surprise each year that I reestablish it. So if there were a need to say no to a meeting time, I would feel comfortable doing it. And I feel comfortable saying that in the public space. If somebody said, hey, can you meet at this time? And I had something in the calendar that was in my personal life and it was very important to my family, I would say that that time wasn't available. And that's just something that I think everyone should have the ability and the boundaries to do. And I think boundary work is something that a lot of people struggle with. That's something that I have worked on for a long time in all areas of my life. But having boundaries is critical to all of our well-being, our mental health, our physical health. So that's really the best way I can describe there. In terms of kind of the other side of things, if I can't make it to something and I have to tell my kids, I tell them why, and I try to make sure that we all understand each other and that they know that my work is not more important to them. It's just simply something that is important, and that I have other people that value my time and need my time as well because of their well-being. So I think it's really about balance in terms of those conversations and honesty and things of that nature.
When you re-establish that culture with the board to be able to protect your personal life, how that conversation goes, did you ever have any need to negotiate to protect your boundaries harder?
Yeah, I don't remember when it was, but I think early when I started here at ACPA, I had a conversation with somebody about this concept, and I recall saying that when I looked for a position, it was imperative that I felt just as good about the organization as they felt about me. And there were organizations where I either was asked to interview or maybe had one conversation and the values didn't align with mine. Perhaps the work that the organization did, meaning the type of association, wasn't something that I could sit there and give my 100% to. So it was critical that before I even started, I was upfront about what I expected. And that doesn't mean I sat there in an interview saying, please know that I'm not going to be working as hard as most people, or something like that. It just meant that I expressed what my values were in terms of managing a team. The concept of leadership for me is not so much that you get up in front of a group of people and say, I am your leader, follow me. It's establishing your core values, what kind of culture you expect, how you're going to treat your people, and hoping that they will in turn follow your lead in that capacity. So establishing what those values were, how I take care of people, what I expect from them in return was kind of a part of that establishing of the concept that I also do those things for myself within balance of my responsibilities to the organization, knowing that it's a very heavy lift and a high level of responsibility in this seat.
I appreciate that. When you touch on the work durations, I just want to make a note that the duration of our work hours doesn't equate to our dedication and commitment to the organization and the community that we serve. And I think this is the foundation of flexibility and choice in any work from home and hybrid work arrangements. And I also want to draw out the key learning of what you just shared in some sort of a step so that it's easier for us to digest. What I'm hearing is that we can protect our work-life balance and create the boundaries around that. It needs to start with transparency, so very clear communications, not only with the board, but also with our team, and also find way to demonstrate that as we are being part of the team. So not only we make time for ourselves, for our work and for our personal life, but we also embrace our team and allow them to negotiate their work life, their hours, so that they can have that balance as well. Is that a fair wrap up?
That is a fair wrap up. Certainly a fair wrap up of my beliefs. Yes.
So now I want us to go up a level and take a helicopter view of your journey so far. What
Yeah.
is the one thing that you love the most about yourself in that journey?
Well, I don't want to give away the subject of today's talk, although I know it'll be on the title, right, when it gets posted. I think there's different types of leaders and there's different types of organizations which need those different types of leaders. I think about some of the more public eye folks in the big corporate world, the billion-dollar organizations and the very sometimes brash or outspoken people that we see. And sometimes I don't want to say if that's needed, but that's the type of culture that certain companies have and how they gain their success. And that's a known thing. There's a variety of cultures, whether it's a competitive culture or, an empathetically driven culture, whatever it might be. I think you have to have the right leader in place. So in terms of me, I just so enjoy where I'm at now in terms of perseverance and the fact that I've made so many poor decisions in the past and how that perseverance has allowed me to get to where I am now. That's the kind of item that has shaped me in terms of the leader that I am now.
You mentioned poor decisions, and that prompts me to a question right away. Is there one that you can share with us?
I would go back to my very first job. I talk about it all the time with people and I self deprecate. I call myself an idiot. I was immature, a few years out of college, and I was just hitting my stride at Smith Buckland with great managers and people that I still reference to this day, so many things that I learned, and then I left because my mind learned what I had to, and I was ready to take that next step and show off all the things that I had done. And it took me a little while to get to that next step. I'm glad I did it to an extent, but at the same time, I know that I would have really benefited from being a little bit more humble and continuing to learn from those who knew more than me.
So I'm hearing too much passions in a younger phase of our professional life.
It gives me so much credit, V. I like to call myself an idiot. You're allowed to use that word. Yeah, I think I really was in the mindset early in my career of, you know, jump in, prove you can do something, and then move up. And I think that's what a lot of new in their career professionals do, is this concept of when do I get to do the fun stuff? When do I get to stop doing this kind of grunt work? This is not what I signed up for out of college or something like that. And of course, years later, I look back on it and I'm telling all of my young employees, you got to learn this stuff first before you can move up. So, it's definitely a moment of, if only I knew back then what I know now, I think I would have looked at it quite a bit differently. But that's just the type of person that I was. And again, I'd like to think in some weird degree that's what helped contribute to getting me to where I'm at now. There was many moments of pain, involved in that journey.
You reminded me of my feelings when receiving my degree, standing on stage, feeling really proud because I got it. I feel like I could do absolutely everything on the world. And I think you reminded me of that feeling of being arrogant. So thank you for reminding us of those moments. I
Happy to
think
do
we
that.
all
Happy to do that.
experience those moments at some time in our place. So now, 20 years into the professions, being the executive directors of an association, how much does that experience shape who you are today? And what's your mantra sitting in this position as an executive director?
I mean, each job, each phase, each learning experience, it's cliche, but it's true that all of those shape us to become the people that we are now. And that will continue to be true in the future. There are so many moments that I have where I look back and I say, I can't believe I said that out loud. And there are so many moments where I look back and I'm really proud of what I said out loud. So I hear my father's voice a lot, reminding me everything in balance, a personal mantra that I think carries over into my professional life. So I'm definitely a person of balance. And that's just something I believe in. It's like we talk about work and personal life, we talk about our personal health, we talk about what we eat, what we digest in terms of media and books and the news. Any of those things I think have to be in balance. I think when we get too far into one element, it's a lot harder to pull ourselves out of it, but it also can become unhealthy. So I try to make sure that I'm very self-aware of those and keep myself in balance. And then besides that, I don't know who first told me the term, but I say it all the time, fail forward. So sorry if anybody's heard me say that before, but that's my general mantra too, is take risks, calculated risks, have clarity about decisions that we make. And as long as we have that clarity, let's take that step. If we succeed, that's the goal. If we fail, but we know why we failed, then we're failing forward. And I think that's what every single successful organization, company, person, it doesn't matter the size, has done, is fail forward. So talk about that a lot.
Can you give me an example or stories to demonstrate that fail forward?
Without trying to think and stay here silently thinking about that for too long, I would say pretty much everything we're doing at ACPA, the current organization, is kind of resembles that. So that could be launching a new event and saying, hey, we've never done this before, but it feels like there's a need based on data, based on feedback, and we're going to frame the agenda, the learning, the goals around what we know so far, and then we're going to do it. We're not going to wait 3 more years to collect more data and to perfect this thing. We launched a virtual retreat for a specific group of healthcare discipline within our organization, and we had 200 plus people join the very first launch, which was an amazing response. And it just showed that there was a need for it. It just didn't mean that we had everything right. So I wouldn't say we failed. Obviously, again, that's more of a term than a reality. But there was plenty of good feedback that we got from running the event that we could then take and continue to craft it. So that's just an example of not waiting until you think you have every answer, until you're going to knock it out of the park and going for it. I think all of us and every organization is more tempted under that idea of we're not ready, we're not ready, we're not ready. And then by the time 3 years goes by, you've wasted time, you've lost opportunity, you've lost value. So that's kind of a general way to look at how we fail forward.
Yeah. You reminded me of the phrase that we never be ready. All we can prepare for is be as ready as we are.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's maybe a healthier way of putting it than fail forward. But yeah, I mean, I think I don't know when I became this way. I'm a big runner as well. And so I think to some degree that concept applies. I just spoke about this in my conference when I gave my remarks, but there's this funny feeling when you start a race that you've been training for a long time. And there's this weird moment where you're like, I'm ready. And then you're like, I'm not ready. And then you run it and you're sort of like, I'm ready. And then in the middle of it, you're like, don't know if I'm ready. And then you finish it. And you're like, I did it. I was ready. So it's kind of the same thing of, that mindset, but you got to go for it. I think that's really what it comes down to. And, we're a staff of 6, we're a small organization, but I've come from some really large organizations. And so I think my mindset definitely has to do with working at some of those big organizations as well, knowing what's possible, not feeling limited just because we're small. And I think that's a big part of it too, is, you just got to go for it.
Definitely. And you also remind me of another moment of my life. I went bungee jumping before.
Wow.
So the feeling when I got to the cliff, I was so excited, got up to it. I thought I was pretty brave. I got to
More
the
brave
cliff
than
and
me.
I almost retreated. And people was just, the line was waiting behind me and I don't know how to move anymore. And then all of a sudden I just close my eye and go for it. And it
Amazing.
was like the best feeling ever. Like my hands almost touched the water. And then someone just pulled me out, but I couldn't move for a good minute or so. But you just reminded me of that anxiety and anticipation and excitement before the big runner that you
Yeah.
just shared.
Yeah. I love
Thank
it.
you for that.
It's awesome.
I want to move to the second part of our conversations and talking about what you have alerted us to, the chosen keywords. So which word did you choose for our discussion today?
Imperfection.
And why imperfection?
Well, if you can't tell, me talking about my past, it's just such a great word. I don't know. None of us are perfect. Imperfection helps us grow. I think vulnerability is a big part of that. Being able to admit where we are not good at certain things or where we want to be better. So, yeah, it's a great way to look at ourselves.
Okay, so I'm trying to be very honest here when I'm throwing you the next question.
Please.
As the leader of organizations, do you have the pressure that you have to perform everything correctly to move forward?
That is a great question. Being an executive director, CSE, CO, any of those terms, it's a weird thing. I think there's a perception, especially earlier on in my career, but I sort of recognize it when I work with other people who are at different levels, that we as executives know all the answers and we know so few answers when it really comes down to it. But there's this concept that when you look at people in leadership positions, you're like, well, they know everything. They know how to do all these things and how to make the right decision. And it's just years of experience and trial and error and good mentors, good coaching that feed into how to make those decisions and what to do and how to seek clarity and concepts of leadership, all these different things. So I definitely do not know all the answers a lot of the time. I depend on our team for so much, and I tell them that. You know, I'm a firm believer in surrounding yourself with smarter people than you. If I don't know something, I don't want to pretend that I'm going to learn it perfectly. I think that at this point, I did a lot of things extremely well when I was responsible for one or two very specific things. So that could have been meetings and events, which is where I started, how that kind of feeds into project management, into event marketing. Those concepts were very strong for me, and I was very successful at those. And then eventually feeding into strategy, new initiatives, things of that nature, the ability to kind of grasp those things and how to move them forward and get buy-in, I think is a big part of this too. So those are certain things that have led me to where I'm at. But I don't feel the pressure to know everything or to pretend to know everything, because I'm outwardly admitting all the time that I don't know everything and that I want all of us to succeed as a collective and that it's not about me. Again, I think different organizations wouldn't benefit from that. Competitive sales driven organizations sometimes would fail in that capacity. But for me, in a servant leadership role, nonprofit, associations, I'm a very firm believer that it's not about us as executives. It's about our volunteers, it's about our boards, it's about our board chairs, it's about our members. So for me, it's not about me. It's about how successful our organization is. And that, I think, helps me with that vulnerability and not needing to know all the answers.
Okay. I'm hearing that you embrace a lot of imperfections and a lot of learning curves, a lot of support from the team. I'm looking for a stories here. Is there anything that you can share with me?
In terms of imperfection or
How
things
did
of
you
that nature,
embrace imperfection as a leader of an organization?
and I think I talk about being vulnerable and imperfect all the time, whether I'm saying that word. I think that's a big part of it. The other side of that, actually, that's a bit more of a firm answer, is being responsible for the organization. So when we fail, it's me who's failing. It's not an individual team member. So I think a strong leader will never blame somebody for a decision that they made. I think that's a big part of imperfection, is making sure that we know the power that we hold. And I use that word lightly. It's not like I'm like an all powerful person, but the fact of the matter is that I am in a position of power, and that I do yield some degree of power over a staff, over an organization, finances. I mean, there's a lot of items in this seat that come with that title. And so making sure, especially my team, knows that our imperfection is not any one individual's imperfection allows people to feel more comfortable and more safe in that environment. I think in environments where people are blamed or put on the spot, it creates a culture where people are afraid to try, they're afraid to succeed, and they're functioning out of a place of fear, which is not something that fosters growth and excitement and a passion for what we do. So while not a specific story per se, I just think that everything that I do on a daily basis is about that concept of knowing that we want to get things right as much as possible, but that they know that I don't expect perfection, which is another way of talking about imperfection. But I'm imperfect all the time. I don't know, without a specific story. I just truly, I try things every day, I would say, whether it's a way that I'm trying to coach somebody that, let's say, they don't receive well, and I'm not seeing the results that I wanted. I don't blame them for that, unless there's something tangible or literal. I say to myself, well, what am I doing wrong? Like, what am I not giving this person that is resonating to get them to where I know they're capable of getting? If I'm seeing a financial initiative that we took not doing as well as I wanted, what am I doing wrong? Who do I need to consult with? What can I do better here for the organization to yield the result that I want? So it's just a term that I think allows us to evaluate ourselves all the time and seek to do better, while also not putting too much pressure on ourselves. Because again, the concept that we should somehow know everything or be perfect is far too much pressure for any individual to handle on a daily basis, especially in this industry.
That's really cool. I'm sensing how you build your culture around this conversation type that start with nobody is perfect. And that means there's room for all of us to learn. And there's room for all of us to discuss idea and issue with each other so that we can make something perfect.
Yeah, I mean, we're all adults. I guess that's another funny way of putting it too. I hire adults in my company. I'm not here to be somebody's parent. So we go to college, we get experience, we have jobs to use that experience. There's probably a little bit of past life angst that comes from that too. Probably, again, that early career stuff of feeling like I wasn't given the voice that I wish I had. Even if I look back and know that I had more to learn, I do think that things have changed from the early 2000s in terms of what people bring to the table, and making sure there's more input and more of a voice for people, even if they don't have as much experience. It's kind of this idea of not giving people a voice just means you're potentially missing out on an idea. But it also gives them the opportunity to have a voice and be told, we're probably not going to use that idea, or that's not a good idea, which allows them to learn as well. So yeah, it's not that we function under this concept of like, let's just like throw caution to the wind and try things and not succeed. I mean, I'm a driven person who wants to succeed, and I'm a type A person who wants things to be sometimes perfect. And, to use that term, especially when it comes to detail and design and events and things like that. But in between all that, to get to that point, we have to be imperfect, and we have to create a culture that allows that imperfection to get there. If we function like that every day, that's when I think people start to falter, and you have a culture that's not healthy. So I'm really proud of a culture. I'm proud of everyone who we have, whether they have 20 years of experience or 3 years of experience. I think we have a fantastic team, and people have bought into that culture, which allows us to thrive.
It sounds like a very safe environment when everyone are able to voice their thoughts and feelings and opinions.
Yeah. V, let me just say to your comment right there, safe culture. Unsafe cultures suck. And I think that every executive, it's on ourselves to make sure that we understand that power that we yield, and that cultures seep into personal lives and our well-being and our ability to feel motivated and happy. And I just think that unhealthy cultures suck. And I'm going to go on record and say that. You can use that as my quote for the podcast.
Definitely will. Thank you. Thank you. I want also to build on that and repeat a quote that everyone knows since forever. Culture is strategy for breakfast any day.
Sure. Yeah, that's a good one.
And I
It
want
is.
to now bring this conversation up to that organizational level with your stories, with the view of imperfections and how you embrace imperfection. What
Mhm.
legacy do you envision sculpting within your organizations?
I think it's cliche, but I do like the idea of leaving something better than you found it. So I think to some degree that resonates with me all the time, whether that means financially, whether that means membership numbers. In my case, when I say leave it better than I found it, what I really mean is the work that we do as an organization. So a lot of the initiatives that we have going now that are different from when I first started here a few years ago, which was more post-pandemic, it was more stabilizing the organization, it was more what does our future look like? Now we're more entering that future, and how do we provide better patient care? How do we provide better patient equity, equity in healthcare, access to healthcare, insurance issues, representation issues in the cleft and craniofacial community? How do we make sure our members are getting what they need when it comes to the education they need, and that we're meeting the needs of the modality, that they get that from us, whether that's online, in person, etc. How are we partnering with organizations around the world to make sure that we are sharing what we have here in the US from an access and equity standpoint, to make sure that we are doing our part to make sure others have that same access? All these things feel like, however long it takes, that I'm somehow going to leave this place in a better shape than I found it. And that's not to say that we were in bad shape when I got here. It just means I want to look back and make sure the patients and families that we serve, their lives are better because of the work that we're doing. And I want to make sure that our members and our community feels a passion for ACPA and feels like they have a place in the community, because that's what associations are really for.
So think about all the initiatives that you have launched during your time here. What is the one that you absolutely most proud of?
I'm going to break the rules and say two. The first would be the rebrand that we went through a couple years ago. We're an 80-year-old organization. We just celebrated our 80th anniversary. And when I first started on the listening tour, which is essentially the first year of this job, I heard a lot about a lack of identity in terms of our brand. No one necessarily used that word, but what is our mission? Very few people kind of could recite it perfectly or know what it meant. What does the logo mean? What is our culture? Anything that goes in that concept of brand. Who are we? What are we doing? What does ACPA stand for in the scientific community? All those things are, are kind of our core brand. So we set out to answer that question through a comprehensive process, and by all means, our visual presence is awesome, but the core brand values, I think, are really what has driven us to this point. And clarifying those and establishing new ones is now something that resonates in that cultural element. So brand for me was not just like a fun word. It really had to do with where we were going to go. And a big part of that was the concept of being the leading scientific organization in cleft and craniofacial care. And so in terms of what I'm proud of, what we're working on now has to do with that. We're leading the science in cleft and craniofacial care, and we're making sure that we're talking about that. We're currently in the process of overhauling what we call the parameters of care, which is really the only guiding document in cleft and craniofacial care from a clinical perspective. Because we have 25 plus disciplines, we don't govern one single healthcare discipline. So we said to ourselves, well, what control do we have over how patients and families are served? And this document and the need to overhaul it was a big part of that. So this has been a task force that has been working for more than a year. It's something that will get published in our scientific journal. It's the most used item around the globe. So I'm really excited to finalize this hopefully in the next month or so. It's been a year-long task that should change the world of cleft and craniofacial care, which is a pretty awesome thing to say.
That is awesome with a global impact like that. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Now I want to move down a level and talking
Okay,
about your CEO and staff relationship.
sure.
So what would happen to this legacy of yours if you were to leave tomorrow?
V with the good questions. I always kind of joke about the term, what if I won the lottery, as opposed to, what if I got hit by a bus? So that concept is certainly there. I don't know what would happen to the legacy. I don't know if I care about having a legacy to some degree. I just had a conversation recently with somebody, and there's a presentation at ASA Annual. I think it's called something like How to Transition After a Long Time. I mentor a few people, whether it's officially like through YPAC or otherwise, and it comes up a lot that longtime executives have a hard time letting go of their organization and their job. And sometimes it gets really messy and really hairy. And I feel like my job is the opposite of that. It's like get here, train everyone to do good work, and at some point move on so the organization continues to grow. This isn't my organization. This is a membership organization that belongs to our members. And so my goal is, to use the term legacy would be more just that people carry on the culture of empathy, of passion for what we do, of expecting high level, high quality work, that this concept of being the leaders of the science and the leaders in this space carries through. So I would expect that everyone still carries that on. If I weren't here tomorrow, that's certainly what I've been trying to establish since I started on day one.
Thank you. It says a lot about how your work impact the organizations and the community that you serve. And it sounds like there were a lot of outcomes and outputs from your work, and you have set up an infrastructure as well as structure rigid enough so that the rest of the organization can carry on and build on from that. So thank you for sharing that. We are getting to the end of the episode soon. Is there anything else you'd like to make a remark in terms of imperfections or your mantra as a CEO or anything else?
I appreciate you giving me the platform. I think some people have said to me, I would never want to be an executive director, and that's totally fine too. I think it is a unique role. I enjoy it. I really, really enjoy it. I've worked at other places that there have been complicated moments in the seat, and I understand there will be complicated and difficult moments in my current role. Not every organization is as warm and fuzzy per se. Not every organization serves, let's say, a vulnerable healthcare community. But from the other executives that I work with, I do feel like in associations, not all, but the vast majority feel a sense of pride in moving something forward. I heard people speak at a CEO symposium at ASA last year, and there were some industries that are very trade driven, whether it's manufacturing or transport or something like that. And that's not necessarily taking care of children with rare syndromes. But the idea is that we are giving a very large community what they need to be successful in their professional careers. And obviously that has to do with their personal lives too. And for me, that's very rewarding, whatever industry that might be. And I think that's why associations are a special place. We really do kind of keep the ball rolling when it comes to pretty much every industry here in the US and internationally, obviously, as well. So I would encourage anybody who's interested in becoming an executive director to be interested. There's a term that we just talked about in my annual meeting, and it comes up in a lot of places, and it's ask curious questions. Be curious. It helps us remove our defensiveness. So when we feel attacked, instead of being defensive or pushing back, ask curious questions, get curious. And I think that's really what allows us to be the people that we want to be. So that's where I'll leave it there.
I'm hearing a lot of willingness to open conversations and willingness to be vulnerable in that space as well. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Okay.
So if your organization were a fictional character, who would it be?
Oh boy. A fictional character? Oh man.
Or real characters?
Yeah, I would say that's a good question. Sorry, I don't mean to hesitate for too long. On a personal level, I know who I would go with. It would be Will Ferrell, just because he's the goofiest man that I have ever seen, and I love humor. And you know what? I'm going to go with that. Any of his characters, we'll say fictional characters. I always say, I guess the one thing I didn't talk about is humor. What we do at my organization is pretty serious when it comes down to it in terms of who we serve, but we have to allow ourselves to enjoy that work at the same time. And I think a part of that has to be related to humor. So pretty much on a daily basis in our staff meetings and really anyone I talk to, I think humor is a big part of how I operate. There's whatever study it is that says like when you smile and all the chemicals released in your brain, and things like that. I just think that we have to be able to smile and laugh, and that helps us move through. So I'm going to go with goofy old Will Ferrell characters as my organization's fictional character.
Loving him, and that start releasing the happy hormone for me already.
Exactly.
This is the end of the episode. Thank you again for your time and sharing your story with us today.
Yes. V, first of all, thank you so much for having me on. This has been great. Appreciate it. Thank you for even coming up with this concept in the first place. I hope you have many others on. That said, my name is Adam Levy, and you are listening to Humans of Authenticity, the CEO Special Edition.